Well, thanks for joining us on In Business today. China's economy continues to grow at an exponential pace, with the growth rate estimated to reach 11.2% this year and 10% in 2008. The double-digit growth rates over the last 4 consecutive years and those predicted over the next 2 mean more and more opportunities will continue to open up for Australian small to medium enterprise importers. Currently, over 3,000 homegrown businesses are active in the emerging market. But understanding both the opportunities and challenges of trading with China is critical to the future and success of those businesses. One company that's leading the way in doing just that is Octet Finance, and Managing Director Clive Eisenberg joins us now in the studio to tell us all about his business and the essential ingredients needed to achieve success in the Chinese market. Mr. Eisenberg, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's a real pleasure to have you on board. I just wanted to begin by asking you a little bit about the Chinese market. As I mentioned, the pace of growth there this year expected to reach 11.2%. That's just staggering.
It is staggering, especially when you compare it to places like France, which is at 0.4%, and the United States, which is at 0.6%. So that's one hell of a rate to grow at over 10%.
And what are the main fundamentals driving that level of growth?
Well, the domestic economy in China is huge, as you can imagine, and there's a lot of catch-up to be done over the, it's been behind the 8 ball for some time, and that growth will just carry on. It's not affected to the extent that we are affected in the Western world, what's happened in the United States. So that growth will continue for some time.
Now, what types of opportunities does China offer Australian small to medium enterprises?
Well, the whole Western world has moved its manufacturing base to China, and that's brought costs down quite substantially. And it allows Australian SMEs the opportunity to be competitive with the domestic market and the rest of the world. So moving or sourcing manufactured business from China brings your competitiveness down to the level of everyone else.
So what other opportunities are there other than just cost savings?
Well, you do have an efficiency. The Chinese market is pretty efficient. There is a huge opportunity of growth. So in other words, as your business grows, so your volumes can grow out of China. So those are significant in any small business, especially small business tends to grow rather rapidly at the beginning. And by using China, this does assist in your growing your small business.
What about the location of China in terms of being close to European markets and US markets?
Well, it's pretty close to Australian markets, so I don't think location in today's age is a major issue. Transport's pretty good, and whether you're in Australia, whether you're in the United States, everyone seems to be heading straight towards China.
Now, it used to be quite difficult, and still is reasonably difficult, for businesses to get into or to enter the Chinese market. Just run us through a bit of the history on those difficulties.
Well, the difficulties in entering the Chinese market was more from the outside than the inside. You've got a total different culture, you've got a total different language, and what's happened over time is those difficulties have been, or those problems have been acknowledged, and there are no more issues. So, whether you're going to China, whether you were going to India, it was always the issue. Like I said, it's a different mentality, different culture, and different language, and you just got to get used to those or work with them.
What about government regulations? How does that sort of stand?
Well, there is bureaucracy in China, but I have to say in business there's a lot of bureaucracy here in Australia, so it's not a major, once you've dealt with bureaucracy in Australia, you can pretty well deal with bureaucracy in China.
Well, last month the China Business Summit was held in Sydney. Yep. It had a focus on how to profit in the world's fastest growing economy. Can you tell us a little bit more about the summit and some of the topics of interest there?
I attended that summit, and it was very much geared towards Australian exports into China, as opposed to how does Australian importers deal with buying goods out of China. So the focus was, although still very important for us, it certainly never addressed the issues that Australian SMEs, particularly Australian SMEs, have getting goods out of China.
And do you think that certain issues need to be addressed regarding?
Well, the issues are more in China, and what they are is that Chinese exporters do not provide open account terms, trading terms to not just Australian SMEs, as USA, Europe. We're all on the same boat in that. So it's how do you address your cash flow, because if you were buying goods domestically, you would most probably get 30 to 60-day terms in which to sell, and by that to pay, and by that stage you invariably have sold your goods as well. Mm-hmm. When you're buying goods from China as an SME, one tends to have to pay on delivery, cash up front, or letter of credit. So that does put a cash flow strain on most small businesses.
And that's where you step in, isn't it?
That's where we step in.
Tell me a little bit about your company, Octet Finance,
yep,
and what it does. Well,
Octet Finance is providing import finance to Australian SMEs. It works. It's a trade credit card process. It works just like the credit card works for the consumer. If you as a consumer will go into China to buy goods or buy stuff at a retail store, you would use your credit card, and 55 to 60 days later, when you arrive back in Australia, you'd pay for those goods, and everyone's happy. This works on the same principle, but it's business to business. So Australian businesses going to China can use their card to buy goods from Chinese exporters, and technically that you've got up to 60 days on the exact same principle as happens with the consumer credit card.
And how long has the business been operating?
Exactly 9 weeks.
So it's very new.
It's very new.
What sort of feedback or involvement have you had from people wanting to come on board?
Well, this whole, talking about bureaucracy early on, it's taken us quite some time to get it going, both in China to get necessary approval, and in Australia to make sure that we adhere to all the money laundering requirements, etc., etc. But, it's every single Australian wholesaler and a lot of retailers are all importing, and whether it's from India or China, that's the fact. And China is, I would say, the dominant exporter into Australian markets.
So if I want to set up a business where I have a shop that sells goods,
yep,
I can come to you,
yep,
get one of your credit cards.
Yep.
What are they called?
It's called the Octet Trading Card.
The Octet Trading Card. I can obtain one of those.
Yep.
I can travel to China.
Yep.
I can buy the goods that I need for my business on this card.
Yep.
How much money can I spend?
Well, firstly, you don't have to travel to China. You can do it here, so long as you're on the internet. And naturally, just like in Visa on the consumer side, just like Visa, you need both parties to be on the Visa network. In other words, the consumer has to have a Visa card and the merchant has to have a Visa card. In Octet, the seller has to have an Octet card, and naturally the importer has to have an Octet card. And all the transaction, the communication, it's a closed community internet facility. And that's how it's transacted. So whatever you need, you upload your purchase order, the Chinese exporter downloads the purchase order, confirms whatever, and on due date, it gets paid, and your finance is based here in Australia as opposed to based in China.
I still want to find out how much I can spend on this, but we will go to a break, and we will be finding out shortly after the break. We'll also delve into the background of our guest today, Clive Eisenberg, Managing Director of Octet Finance, to find out how he got where he is today. Stay with us.